All right, Faith and Justice, folks. Here we are in week 3. Wanted to thank you for your continued engaged dialogue with one another. There's a great deal of momentum behind what we're doing, or at least have been doing so far. This is our second and last week of the summer term, where we are looking at Christianity in Latin America. So, what we have this week are two readings. One by Jose Miguel Bonino, and one by me, an article I wrote. Hopefully, I submitted it for publication. The editors of the work are having some trouble figuring out the publishing thing, but it's in the queue to be published. That I wrote as a sort of tribute memorial to Miguel Bonino, but also as a way that someone like me from the global north can make sense of my own social location as I read Miguel Bonino, and not appropriate him, not take him and bend Miguel Bonino towards what I want him to say or what I want him to do, right? But to really wrestle with the implications of what this Christian theologian said over his long career in Latin America as a theologian, as a scholar, as an author. What implications are there for the things that he says in the ways that we can live our lives, construct and understand who we are, allow certain voices who are traditionally in mainstream society and northern society excluded from our conversations? What would it mean to include them, right? And I'm doing this intentionally in conversation with the Miguel Bonino essay that I gave you to read for this time. So Jose Miguel Bonino is, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he's Argentinian. He is a Protestant theologian, and that in and of itself is significant because many of the liberation theologians, like the Oscar Romeros that we encountered last week, are Catholic. Miguel Bonino is one of the most prominent or prolifically published Protestant liberation theologians. And we get in this small little essay where he's unpacking history, he's unpacking memories, unpacking praxis. And from a liberation Christian perspective, praxis is sort of the blending of one's doctrine, of one's action in the world, of one's working for justice and that freedom that we talked about last week. That this is the place that Bonino starts from, is we have to act. If we don't act, if we sit around thinking about what Christianity is all about, if we sit around just thinking about what doctrines and things are all about, and people are dying in the streets, literally, we are not fulfilling, according to Miguel Bonino, the mandates of what it means to be Christian in a Latin American context. Okay, so there's a lot of historical stuff built into that. If we have a chance in the discussions, I'll help flesh out some of the larger political things for what gave liberation theology in Latin America rise, right? Why is it that there's this need for liberation of the ways that people are living? Why are there these movements towards social justice that these Christian theologians are risking their lives for, right? All right, so this week, this is what I want you to engage, or these are the two things that I want you to engage. Read the things. We'll have our discussion based on those, and I'd like to leave you with this sort of challenge. In my Religion and the Human Quest class, the 200 level religion class that everyone has to take, I ask students to define religion. And we come up with a definition of religion. What is religion? Religion is, right? And so often the definition is a belief in, and it starts with some theistic statement, right? There are limits, there are constraints to the definitions that we bring, but we still need definitions. They help contains certain things, but if we get too contained by the definition becomes it lacks a dynamic element that our language is, that we've cultivated our language to produce. Language is dynamic, definitions are dynamic, which is why they're always updating the Webster or all these dictionaries, because language is dynamic, it's not very static. For our class, instead of defining religion, because we're really working just with Christianity in this course, or at least that's our primary focus, I want you to try to define what is tradition. Does that make sense? What is tradition? Is tradition static? Is it dogmatic? Does it exist in isolation, or is it independent from a community? Or is a community necessary for it? What's at stake if traditions change? If things are forgotten or left behind, no longer relevant, no longer meaningful in certain kinds of ways? Or is it incumbent upon those within the tradition to maintain all of those things and therefore bring them with us? So ask yourselves, what is tradition? Because these Latin American theologians over the last 500 years have been asking this question as well. They have a tradition that's been brought to them. And insofar as Christianity has has taken root in Latin America, and we'll see this again in the continents of Africa and Asia as well. Insofar as Christianity takes root in these places, right, we have to figure out, this is similar to the question of culture, what is tradition? What do we keep? What do we throw away? What do we morph? What can be morphed? What has to stay exactly the same? I'll give you one example and then we're done. The example that I give is this. With the Lord's Supper, the Eucharist, what's at the heart of the Eucharist? I had a conversation about this the other day, and the gentleman told me what's at the heart of the Lord's Supper is the presence of Jesus in this ceremony, in the ritual. There's this invocation, right? And if you're Catholic, it's the way that Jesus is present is going to be different than if you're Protestant, because this is one of the main things that these two groups split over, one of them. Does it have to be wine? The Catholic Church has asked this question. Does the Eucharist have to be wine? Well, if we say yes, there are certain implications for places to which grapes and wine are not native and can't be native. What do we do in Japan? I mean, now we can import wine, and they do this all the time, right? Where can you use rice wine and not grape wine, right? Or in a Latin American context, do you have to use wheat for the host? Can you use cornmeal, right? Corn is more indigenous than wheat is to the Americas, or at least Central and South America. What happens, right? Are we trotting down tradition by changing the substance of the Eucharist? These questions matter when it comes to the integration of Christian traditions and cultures from one place and the indigenization of those Christian traditions and beliefs and other things in another place. Okay, happy discussing. I look forward to what you all have to say.